Something shifted the moment that legal move was made, and it wasn't subtle. It told people this situation might be way bigger than what's been said out loud. Because you don't bring in a high-profile defense like that unless you're preparing for something serious. Not rumors. Not internet talk. Real consequences. Listen, this isn't just another headline about rappers and street issues crossing over. This is about timing. And the timing here raised a lot of eyebrows. Because right when things were supposed to move toward clarity, instead, everything got quieter. And when things go quiet at that stage, it usually means the real conversations are happening somewhere else. Now check this out. The names tied to this situation carry weight on their own. Different backgrounds. Different affiliations. But somehow, everything collided into one moment that changed the direction for everybody involved. And what's strange is how little official information has actually been confirmed compared to how serious the situation sounds. According to reports, the incident itself already had tension built into it before anything even went public. People close to the scene were already aware something wasn't right. And once those details started leaking, even in small pieces, the narrative online started forming fast, but not necessarily accurately. Here's the thing. When you see someone make a legal move this calculated before everything fully unfolds, it tells you they're not reacting, they're anticipating. That means there are details the public hasn't seen yet. And if that's true, then what we're watching right now might only be the surface level of something deeper. But now it gets strange. Because while the internet is focused on what already happened, the people directly connected to this situation are focused on what could happen next. And those are two completely different conversations. One is about reaction. The other is about survival. And somewhere between those two is the truth nobody has fully explained yet. The situation didn't start with that legal move. It started earlier, in a moment that still hasn't been fully explained in public. According to reports, what happened that night involved multiple people, multiple perspectives, and a level of tension that didn't come out of nowhere. The names connected to it, Allstar Jr., NBA Ben10, and DeadEnd Ron, aren't random. Each one carries their own history, their own affiliations, and their own presence in the streets and in music. So when those names show up in the same incident, people don't see coincidence, they see buildup. Here's what makes it more complicated. Early details were unclear, and that confusion hasn't fully gone away. Some reports suggested there was an altercation before anything escalated. Others pointed towards something more sudden, like things turned serious without warning. But nothing has been confirmed in a way that locks the story into one version. And when that happens, it leaves space for speculation to grow faster than facts. Now think about the timeline. The incident happens. Word starts spreading, first quietly, then louder. Social media picks it up, but the information is inconsistent. Some people claim they know exactly what went down. Others say the story is being twisted. And in the middle of all that noise, there's a noticeable absence of clear statements from the people directly involved. That silence didn't calm anything. It made everything feel heavier. Because silence at that stage doesn't feel normal. It feels like something is being handled behind the scenes. And then comes the legal shift. When Allstar Jr. reportedly brings in a lawyer known for handling serious, high-profile cases, people immediately start reading between the lines. Not because they know the full truth, but because they understand what that kind of decision usually means. It signals preparation, not just for public opinion, but for something official. Here's the thing people keep circling back to. If the situation was straightforward, the response would look different. There would be clarity early on. There would be statements that guide the narrative. Instead, everything feels controlled, limited, almost like information is being released or held back very carefully. And that brings attention back to the people involved. NBA Ben10 isn't just a random name in this conversation. He's connected to a larger movement, a bigger spotlight. So anything involving him automatically draws more attention, more scrutiny. The same goes for DeadEnd Ron. His name being part of the situation adds another layer that people are trying to understand, especially since details about his involvement remain unclear. Now the emotional stakes start showing. Because this isn't just about what happened, it's about what it means for everyone connected. Careers, reputations, street credibility, legal outcomes. All of it is on the line at the same time. And when that much is at stake, people don't move casually. Every decision becomes calculated. That's why the early reactions felt so restrained. No loud explanations. No immediate breakdown of events. Just small signals. Small moves. And people paying attention started noticing those signals almost instantly. Another thing that stood out was how quickly rumors started filling the gaps. Some people online claimed it was a targeted situation. Others said it was a misunderstanding that escalated too far. But again, none of that has been confirmed. And the more those theories spread, the harder it becomes to separate what's real from what's being assumed. But here's where it gets important. Even without full confirmation, the seriousness of the situation is clear. Because when legal teams get involved early, it usually means there's potential for long-term consequences. Not just headlines that fade, but outcomes that stick. And right now, everything still feels like it's in that early phase. Pieces are there, but they don't fully connect yet. Statements are missing. Details are incomplete. And the people closest to the situation are moving carefully, not publicly. Which brings everything back to one point. This isn't just about understanding what happened. It's about watching how it unfolds from here. And this is where things started to move faster, but not necessarily clearer. Because once the story hit a wider audience, social media didn't just react, it amplified everything. Clips, posts, screenshots, and secondhand accounts started circulating all at once. And the problem with that kind of momentum is simple. Speed replaces accuracy. Now the conversation wasn't just about what happened. It became about what people thought happened. Some users online were convinced the situation was personal, pointing to past tensions and suggesting this wasn't random at all. Others pushed a completely different angle, saying it might have been a misunderstanding that escalated too quickly in the wrong environment. But again, none of this has been confirmed. And that gap between belief and fact is where things started getting messy. Here's what made it even more complicated. Different versions of the timeline began showing up. One version suggested there was a buildup before anything serious happened. Another version claimed everything unfolded within moments, without warning. And when those two narratives exist at the same time, it becomes nearly impossible for the public to know which direction is closer to the truth. But now it gets strange. Because while all these theories were spreading, certain details weren't being addressed at all. Not corrected. Not clarified. Just left sitting there. And when key details go untouched like that, people start wondering if it's intentional, or if nobody can fully speak on it yet. That uncertainty started fueling deeper speculation. Some people began questioning whether everyone involved has told the same version of events behind closed doors. Others wondered if there are details that haven't surfaced because they involve more than just the names already mentioned. And to be clear, that's speculation, not fact. But it shows you where the public mindset shifted once the story lost clarity. Now look at how the reactions started dividing. On one side, you had people defending Allstar Jr., saying there must be context missing, something that hasn't been revealed yet. On the other side, there were people focusing on the seriousness of the situation itself, arguing that regardless of context, the outcome is what matters most. And between those two sides, the conversation kept getting louder, but not more accurate. Another layer that added tension was how quickly certain posts started disappearing. Fans noticed clips being taken down, mentions getting deleted, conversations being cleaned up. And while that doesn't confirm anything on its own, it does change how people read the situation. Because when digital traces start vanishing, it makes people think there's something worth hiding, even if the reality is more complicated than that. Now here comes the first real shift. The legal angle stopped being background noise and became the center of attention. People weren't just talking about what happened anymore. They started focusing on what could happen next. Possible charges, possible defenses, possible outcomes. And once that shift happens, the entire tone of the situation changes. Because now it's not just about narrative, it's about consequences. And when consequences enter the conversation, everything tightens up. That's when people started reevaluating the earlier details. Things that seemed small at first suddenly felt more important. Questions that were ignored early on started coming back with more weight behind them. And the more those questions stacked up, the more it felt like the full story still hadn't surfaced. If you're following this closely, you can feel that shift. This isn't just about reacting to updates anymore. It's about trying to understand what hasn't been said yet. So if you're paying attention to how this is unfolding, make sure you stay locked in, because situations like this don't reveal everything at once. They unfold in layers, and right now, it still feels like we're only seeing the beginning of something much bigger. And this is the point where the story stops being about noise and starts becoming about pressure. Because once legal positioning takes center stage, everything else falls into place around it. Not publicly, but behind closed doors, where the real decisions get made. Listen, when someone prepares like this before everything fully plays out, it usually means they understand the weight of what's coming. Not just the headlines, not just the opinions, the actual consequences. And that kind of awareness doesn't come from guessing. It comes from knowing there are details involved that haven't been fully revealed yet. Now here's where things start getting more complicated. Because according to people closely watching the situation, there may be multiple versions of events being discussed privately. Not publicly confirmed, not officially documented, but existing. And when different versions exist at the same time, the question becomes simple: which one holds up under pressure? That's where everything shifts. Because once legal scrutiny increases, it's no longer about what sounds believable. It's about what can be proven. And proving something requires consistency. It requires details that align. It requires timelines that don't fall apart when examined closely. And right now, from the outside looking in, it's not clear if everything lines up yet. Some people believe there's more to the interaction leading up to the incident than what's been shared publicly. Others think the situation escalated too quickly for anyone to fully control it once it started. Both perspectives exist, but neither has been confirmed. And that uncertainty is exactly what's keeping the situation unstable. But now it gets deeper. Because this isn't just about individuals anymore, it's about connections. The people around them. The environments they move in. The history that might not be visible in headlines, but still plays a role in how situations unfold. And when those layers exist, the situation stops being isolated. It becomes interconnected. That's why some observers are paying close attention to who is staying visible and who is stepping back quietly. Because those decisions can reflect more than just public image, they can reflect awareness. Awareness of risk, awareness of involvement, or simply awareness that the situation is bigger than it appears. Now, to be clear, none of that confirms anything on its own. But it does explain why the energy around this feels different. It feels measured. It feels calculated. Like every move is being considered before it happens. And that kind of energy usually comes from understanding that one mistake, one wrong statement, one inconsistent detail can shift everything. Here's another angle people are starting to look at. The possibility that not everything connected to this situation has surfaced yet. Not in a dramatic, explosive way, but in smaller details that haven't been pieced together publicly. Because sometimes, it's not one major revelation that changes everything. It's a series of smaller ones that slowly reshape the entire narrative. And if that's the case here, then what we're seeing now might not be the full picture, it might just be the outline. That's why the legal preparation stands out so much. Because it suggests anticipation, not reaction. Anticipation of questions that haven't been asked publicly yet. Anticipation of details that haven't been revealed yet. And anticipation of a situation that could evolve depending on what comes out next. Now think about what that means for everyone involved. Because if new information surfaces, whether it supports or contradicts what's already believed, it doesn't just affect one person. It affects the entire structure of the situation. Every perspective, every assumption, every early conclusion. And when that structure shifts, people have to adjust quickly. Some will double down on what they believe. Some will step back and reassess. And some might go quiet completely. All of that creates movement. And movement creates unpredictability, which is exactly where things are right now. Not settled, not fully exposed, but moving. Quietly, carefully, and with a level of tension that hasn't been released yet. And when that tension finally does release, it's going to come with answers people weren't fully prepared for. And now everything reaches that point where it can't stay in the middle anymore. Because up until now, this situation has been balancing between what's known and what's still hidden. But eventually, something has to give. Either the silence continues and things get handled quietly, or new information forces everything into the open. And right now, it feels closer to that second outcome. Because the pressure hasn't gone down, it's been building. Slowly, but consistently. And when pressure builds like that without release, it usually leads to a moment where something shifts all at once. Not gradually, not predictably, just one development that changes how everything is seen. Listen, the legal positioning we've been watching from the beginning is starting to make more sense the longer this stays unresolved. Because preparing early only matters if there's something serious to prepare for. And the longer this situation avoids clear answers, the more people start believing that what's coming hasn't surfaced yet. Now here's where the tension really peaks. There's a growing sense that the next update, whenever it comes, is going to carry weight. Not just another rumor. Not just another theory. Something more concrete. And if that happens, it won't just add to the story, it will redefine it. Because once something official enters the picture, everything before it gets reevaluated. Every early assumption, every online reaction, every version of the timeline, all of it gets tested against whatever comes next. And that's where things can turn fast. Because if the new information aligns with what some people have been speculating, then certain narratives will suddenly feel validated. But if it contradicts everything that's been circulating, then the entire conversation resets overnight. Either way, it creates impact. And not just online. Because situations like this don't stay contained to public discussion. They affect real outcomes, legal outcomes, career outcomes, personal outcomes. And once those outcomes start forming, there's no undoing them. That's why this moment feels so critical. Because it's no longer about what people think happened, it's about what can be established, what can be proven, and what direction the situation moves in from here. And those are things the public doesn't control, but they do react to. And that reaction matters. Because perception shapes everything around it. Opportunities shift. Support changes. Doors open or close depending on how the situation is understood. And once that perception settles in, even if it's incomplete, it can stick longer than the facts themselves. Now add another layer to this. The unanswered questions haven't gone anywhere. If anything, they've become more focused. People aren't just asking what happened anymore. They're asking why it happened, how it escalated, and whether there's more to the story that hasn't been revealed yet. And those questions don't disappear until something addresses them directly. Until then, they stay in the background, building pressure. And that pressure is what keeps this situation from fading away. Because unresolved situations don't disappear, they evolve. They wait for the next piece, the next detail, the next shift. And right now, everything still feels like it's waiting. Waiting for clarity. Waiting for confirmation. Waiting for that one moment that moves this from speculation into something more defined. But here's the reality. Not every answer brings closure. Sometimes, answers bring more questions. And if that's what happens here, then this situation doesn't end, it expands into something bigger than what people expected at the beginning. Something that reaches further than just one moment or one decision. And that's why people are still watching. Not just for what's already happened, but for what's about to happen next. Because whatever that next move is, it's going to decide how this entire situation is remembered. So now it really comes down to how you see it. Because everything we just walked through, every move, every silence, every shift, none of it feels random. It feels like pieces of something still unfolding. And if you've been paying attention from the beginning, then you already know this isn't one of those stories that ends clean and simple. There's still too much that hasn't been said. Too many questions that don't have clear answers. And too many signs that something else could surface at any moment. So if you're following this the right way, not just reacting, but actually watching how it develops, then don't fall back now. Stay locked in. Because the moment this situation takes its next turn, it's not going to come with a warning. It's just going to hit. And when it does, you're either going to understand how it all connects, or you're going to be trying to catch up after everything already shifted. So make sure you're tapped in, subscribe, stay connected, and keep your eyes on this, because this story is still moving. And I want to hear from you. Do you think this situation is exactly what it looks like on the surface? Or do you believe there's something bigger behind it that hasn't come out yet?